What? Hey YouTube, y'all. Hey y'all. Hey YouTube. I'm AC from AC Toy Design. Thanks for tuning in. A bit of a different video for you today. Still a tutorial. Not that I'm always going to do tutorials. I don't know. I can do anything I want. It's my channel, right? The other day I walked over to my vintage shelf that you'll be able to see in this video, I think. Every time I start talking. Go sit down right now. So the other night I was lying in bed with my dog. We were asleep and we heard an explosion. What I ended up finding was very mysterious. I walked myself over to the G.I. Joe portion of my vintage toy shelf. And I saw that a bunch of my G.I. Joes, my vintage Hasbro G.I. Joes, were standing up, but just barely hanging on, all halved over, almost like something was wrong. Upon closer inspection, I realized that the O-ring of the G.I. Joes that holds everything together had busted or rotted or broken, whatever terminology you care to use. Which happens over time, especially if it's the vintage O-ring. We're talking about almost 40 years, 35 years. So I realized they needed to be replaced. On top of that, I've had a bunch of folks on my vintage toy Instagram, Mom Gave Them Away, asked me over the last year, probably, I don't know, a dozen or so people asked me how to replace the O-rings on G.I. Joes. I thought it was something that everybody knew. Then I thought, I only learned to do this maybe a few years back when I really got into reclaiming my vintage toys from my childhood that my mom gave away. So I thought, hey, why not? I do a toy something related channel for adults. I'm going to show you guys how to fix those O-rings. It's very simple. First you're going to need a Phillips head, right? With a little X across. Phillips head screwdriver, a little one. Then you're going to need at least one, depending on how many figures you have. I bought a little baggie of these replacement O-rings. I get it? There it is. Yeah. Oh man. Next thing you want is a little bag of these very small screws. You decide which size that is. I don't know which size they are. They're really small. Same ones that go into the back of your G.I. Joes. And the last thing you're going to use is, I use one of these guys. Now if you want to get a little fancy, I also picked up some of these new G.I. Joe stands. These are from smalljoes.com. You want to get peg stands that have tapered pegs, which these kind of do, because you want the peg to be tapered so that it goes into the hole in the foot and doesn't break, force open the plastic of that hole, which I've had happen plenty of times. Never force a G.I. Joe onto a peg stand. But I figured since I was replacing the O-rings, might as well put them on some peg stands to display them a little nicer, because when they do pop, or which happens occasionally, the O-rings break, they'll fall off your shelf, they could damage their crotch, their thumbs, their weapons, who knows. But if most of them are on these peg stands, so let's get a sandwich. Maybe some oats, maybe something else. So I know this is probably not new news. A lot of you know how to fix these guys, but I also found out the other day that some of you don't. I had a good friend who has a lot of experience with vintage toys, especially G.I. Joe, ask me what he's supposed to do when this happens, when the O-rings go bad, and I was surprised that he didn't know. I thought it was old news, but I thought since I got to fix these guys anyway, I'd do a video of it and show you how it's done. A lot of people, I'm gonna put these over here. A lot of people do this every day. They buy big lots of broken Joes and fix them up. It's really great. So anyway, what you got to start with is get yourself a bag of these O-rings. And these are new O-rings. You can get them on eBay or anywhere else. I don't know the measurements, but it looks like that. It does not fit on my pinky. So go from there. It is the size of, shout out to Sean Fuster, by the way, Televiper. So it's that big compared to the G.I. Joe head. So do your measurements there. Tools. So you need the O-rings. Tools. I use one of these guys. It's a little do grabber guy, and a Phillips head. Is that right? With the little X guy, an X-Man screwdriver. Got a little one. And what you want to do is you're going to take the screw out of the back of the figure very carefully. You don't want to crack anything. Take that out. This is a vintage screw, so it's going to have some rust on there. See that? So what I also have that I keep with me is some new screws that fit the Joes. I don't know the size of those either, but it's the same size as the ones that are already in there. Now, I know there's that argument going on, I can hear it sometimes, about what this does, what this means as far as the vintage-ness of your figures. I think it's different. I think it's the same. I think it doesn't affect the vintageness of your figures. Putting in a new screw, putting in a new O-ring, it's just part of the game. Eventually, every one of those vintage O-rings is going to break, rot, fall apart. So you want to put new stuff in there. You're not changing the figure. You're just fixing it. You're just making it feel good. So I got that screw. I'll replace that since this one's rusty. So I took it out. And it should come apart pretty easily, like so. Just pry it apart, and you can see the old O-ring went bad and snapped. It's got a couple indents in there. Now this one doesn't look that old. I'm thinking this is not vintage O-ring. You can see the shininess on there. So what this probably is a maybe a new one that was flawed or faulty. Who knows? There's a million reasons. But what you want to do with your new one is grab these guys, these do things, and I put it inside here. Put the rubber band. This is going to fly across the room. Watch. And I like to stretch it out. I like to stretch out the O-ring a couple ways. Just pull it apart like that. Turn it. I think a lot of people don't do this. It's kind of like when you're exercising. You don't want to exercise cold muscles. You stretch them out first, because if you start using them, they're going to snap. You're going to break. You're going to pull something. So we're warming this up, getting this guy stretched out a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit. So he's flexible. It's more flexible. It's like a rubber band. You wouldn't go stretching a brand new rubber band. It's never been used. Snap. Alright, so we got him stretched out. Done with that. I'm going to try to do this so the camera doesn't... so the camera stays on me. Alright, you got his legs. You got the hook. I might change those out. See that rusty screw in there? Might change those out later, but right now we're doing O-rings. So you hook your O-ring onto the hook, like man. Like so. Right? Boom. He's hooked. Hooked on phonics. Here we go. All right. Feed it back through the crotchal region. Careful with these crotches, remember they snap real easy. Nice. There we go. At this point, you got those long johns. All right. So now a lot of Joes are different on the inside of the body, depending on the space that's in there, in the cavity of the torso. So I'm gonna hook the other end of the O-ring on, sort of bend it back like that, so that I can let go of it and it's just stuck like that. From there, I'm gonna start to assemble it, and this is where I'm talking about the space that's in the cavity. You gotta make the arm pegs and the head peg fit in there so that you can get everything snug. Sometimes it works better without popping everything out, sometimes it doesn't. This guy's doing a pretty good job, it's Grunt. And you got everything in there kind of balanced. And you gotta get that torso back into there. Keep the head on. And you kind of give it a little tug, pull it out, and everything snaps right in. So now at this point, he's just kind of holding himself together. You got those little pegs on the inside of the torso, and you gotta meet everything up. You gotta make sure the arm pegs, the neck peg, the torso pegs all meet up, and that the O-ring stays on, it doesn't fold. So he's good. I'm gonna give him just a little tug right there. Make sure everything's good and tight before I put the screw back in. All right, let's get one of those new screws. Where's that new one? Here it is. Just drop it in, wiggle around, get my fancy screwdriver thing. And important part here is you want to squeeze the torso together. Okay, give it a good squeeze while you're screwing the new screw in. Push against the screw. You don't want it to be too tight, just a little bit snug, but you do want it to be, you want the two halves of the body tight together, but you don't want to tighten the screw too much. And he's good. Man, it's nothing like it's a pretty unique feel, a brand new O-ring and a vintage Joe. He's all good, look at that. So I'm gonna do that to the rest of these guys. I wonder if I can do it right now. Do a little time lapse, dude. Let's try it. I do want to show you guys this. If you noticed on Grunt, the peg for the arm was square, took up a lot more space than the body cavity. On Zartan and this Televiper, they are tapered, I guess. And I think the difference is that, I don't know what year Televiper and Zartan are, I think 85 or 86. So they're a little bit later, whereas Grunt was in the first run, and Grunt does not have, at least my Grunt, does not have the swivel arm. So maybe with the new swivel arm design, they gave those tapered pegs. So they take up less space in the torso cavity, allowing you to sort of hover them, just place them there, and they just hover while you're fitting everything back together. It's a little bit, makes it a little bit easier. Now here's an interesting one. I don't know if this is a mutant or what, but you can see this is a swivel arm figure from the later Joes. It's got the tapered peg on the right arm, and it's got the big square one on the left. What's up with that? I don't know. Maybe somebody out there knows. Now with Firefly, you can see this crack here between the two torso halves. That's because of all that space in there, all those pieces, the bigger arm peg, the bigger neck peg, or the more square, all fighting for space inside there along with the new O-ring. That's why I say you gotta squeeze these things tight while you're screwing it back together. So a big thank you for tuning into this video. I hope it was helpful, at least a little bit. If it wasn't, it really doesn't matter because my beard is okay today. And if you folks have a few clicks left in your fingers, please remember to like, subscribe, and bell icon. Comment below if you wish. And I'm also going to include some affiliate links in the description of the video below to where you can grab some O-rings, screwdrivers, screws, anything you might need for this operation. And if you're enjoying the channel and would like to support and help it grow, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/actoydesign. I post exclusive content on the Patreon almost every day, including behind the scenes, tutorials, first looks, and exclusive videos, and a lot more. And as always, I will yo-jo you in the future. Yo-jo. Yo-jo. Right there. That's a good one. This one? Oof. Yo, Joe. So I walked over to my G.I. Joe's. So I walked over to the G.I. Joe section of my vintage toy shelf. I'm recording over here. Can you be quiet?